I'm gonna put this on Front Street. There is nothing about slashers that merits them a two-parter. So I knew right from the jump that this was just gonna be 120 minutes of undue praise. As a side note, how tone-deaf do you gotta be to have Rob Zombie, of all people, on a slasher documentary?
Slashers have been vilified since they first came on the scene, but they have also been tremendously popular. The worst of them can still be entertaining. The best of them tell us brutal truths about ourselves.
If you can cut through his unapologetic sucking up, he's saying this lowest form of entertainment is beyond valid critique or criticism. If slasher movies are bad, they're good. If they're good, they're informative. It's almost foolproof, you see?
1974, Bob Clark comes in with Black Christmas. That is the first POV of slasher.
POV of slasher? Was that a question? Ellie, baby, be bad at your job or be bad at English. You can't be both. That honor goes to Peeping Tom.
Starting with Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho in 1960, we started seeing a new approach to horror. It was the horror that didn't come out of some grotesque radioactive anomaly, but it could be lurking next door. A nice young man like Norman Bates could be the new Frankenstein, the new Dracula.
Slashers love to identify Psycho as its lineage just to rub shoulders with an all-time classic. Except, how many of those bastard progenies since then even come close to that Hitchcock level, let alone resist the urge to resort to gore, gratuitous nudity, and cookie-cutter characters?
You don't see any on-screen violence. It's all implied.
The hook,
when he
puts
picks
her
her
hand
up
on the meat hook,
and he's holding her over the hook.
Implied violence. That's exactly what I mean. Mind you, this film is called Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it's not the bloodbath it sounds like. It actually plays tricks on the brain. How many slashers today, or since, prefer to go for the jugular because they don't have the smarts to toy with the mind? The comparisons to the legitimate classics just go to show how illegitimate modern offerings fall short.
I don't think Tobe Hooper set out to make a movie about Vietnam, but he could not help but reflect the rebellion that was going on.
Again, this is what I refer to regarding political views then versus now. You would not have even known that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was influenced by the Vietnam War unless someone told you, because you're not pummeled over your head with the politics of the day interfering with the story.
Slasher films of the 1980s didn't really work as horror fiction, but they worked pretty well as slapstick comedies. And the reason for that is, you know, the characters are never allowed to be anything except one-dimensional types. You've got a gang of teenagers, you've got the jock, you've got the stoner, you've got the slut, you've got the virgin. You never care about them, you never fall in love with them, and so when the serial killer starts knocking them off one by one, you laugh instead of recoil in horror because he's actually more of a personality than they are.
This is rare in a lot of horror films, actually like a likable lead. You know, in Friday the 13th, you want most of those actors to die.
You know, after the first movies and the subsequent sequels became, who are these, you know, awful kids that we sort of hate and we can't wait for Jason to take them out?
Two of the problems that I find with the slasher film is that pretty much it's just formulaic, and second of all, it's just about kill count. Not story, not character, you know, all those things that are relevant to a film.
With the success of Friday the 13th and the success of Halloween, producers were ravenous to find material and knowing that, oh, well, this is the formula.
One of the byproducts of success of Friday the 13th and a few other movies was that people on the outside looking in saying, oh, they killed 10 people and they made a lot of money. We'll kill 20 people and we'll make a lot more than that.
The slasher film as we know it was truly born with the most successful horror franchise of all time. Friday the 13th. By the early 80s, slasher movies glutted the market. Audiences loved them.
You sure about that, Chief? Ah, special edition. The Friday the 13th films could never string together two back-to-back box office wins, and inevitably sunk like a drowned victim in a lake. In fact, with the exception of 2 movies, the franchise went on a 7-film decline, with each film making less than the last, and, for the mainline movies, never made as much as the first film. How's that for momentum? Strange that no one ever mentions that.
I gotta tell you something. The worst horror movie I ever saw was great.
Yeah,
Okay?
it's true.
That's the way.
By the time you get to Halloween 4 or Friday the 13th, number 9, you're saying to yourself, well, what we're going to do is we're going to see 5 or 6 really good-looking girls and 5 or 6 really good-looking guys. They're going to get naked, and then they're going to get shot in the head with a bow and arrow. And there's something about that that makes me morally queasy, where you say to yourself, we're not watching this movie anymore to see the monster destroyed. We're watching to see the monster destroy.
Women were protesting it because this idea that it was misogynistic, of course. You know, it's like all these movies get this label of being misogynistic because the victims are primarily women.
Maniac is one of my favorite movies, and I had a feeling you'd like it.
Maniac.
Which
Oh,
is
of
why,
course.
as a gift for you, I brought you a Maniac.
No kidding, you idiot! You scripted this.
We did not rehearse this, folks.
It was a very cheap form of horror entertainment, and those slasher films got a lot of bad press for brutalizing women, for violence, for the gore, and the people making legitimate horror films were afraid that they were going to be tainted by the legacy of a lot of these slasher knockoffs.
I can't believe they actually kept that in this documentary. So you got a critic talking about, yeah, you know, the trash is over here, but the people making legitimate horror movies, oh my god, precious.
I think a lot of people have the wrong idea. They identify these films with earlier thrillers like Psycho, or even a more recent film like Halloween, which we both like. These films aren't in the same category.
Yeah, by a lot of people getting the wrong idea. That could include the fans and the directors that grow up on this trash.
So most often, those reviews just become a soapbox. We're like, look, I'm a good person, I'm a good person. I don't like this sort of thing. But the truth is, we love it.
Eli Roth doesn't even hear himself. In his pursuit of his own hero complex, he sounds like the very same people he condemns for criticizing horror, because he will never skip the chance to brag about how progressive he is.
One of the police officers is unbelievably racist. Like, why is this guy concerned with racism? Those reviews just become a soapbox. We're like, look, I'm a good person, I'm a good person. It's like, it's the enjoying fantasy, enjoying a scary story. It's like, it's no different from Grimm's fairy tales.
Hey there, film buff. There's much more thematic content, storytelling value, and characterization in something like Little Red Riding Hood than there is in some shameless tripe like The Prowler.
By 1984, the golden age of slasher films was over.
He just got finished talking about how people love the slashers of the early 80s, and now the golden age is supposedly over in 84. You're honestly telling me that this subgenre that was oh so popular ran itself into the ground within a 6-year turnaround? Then I guess it wasn't really that popular.
But audiences still wanted their scares, so filmmakers created a new kind of monster. Child's Play was violent, but no one would mistake it for the grim realism of Maniac.
Nor would they confuse Chucky for a slasher. The killer doll is not even the same genre. That's like saying the killer clown Pennywise is a masked maniac.
Chucky was following a trail blazed by one of the most famous characters in the history of horror, Freddy Krueger.
For the record, a dream killer is supernatural, not slasher.
I was so excited about the fact that, oh, there's a new twist to this subgenre that now the rules of any sort of world don't apply.
Dive into the psychosexual darkness of Candyman.
Not even close.
The Silence of the Lambs makes grisly horror respectable.
You're reaching.
In part 2, we'll see how A Nightmare on Elm Street brought slashers back from the grave.
So that'll be the Desperation episode. Can't wait!